Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. The first thing I remember clearly is the floor cleaner humming under my hands, and the television in the waiting room talking about a flu outbreak on the other side of the country. I was stripping the wax off the main corridor on the night shift like every other week. It was just after 11:30 at night. The emergency room doors kept sliding open and shut with that soft chime they make when the sensors trip. Families in hoodies and slippers, people with sprained ankles, a guy who had clearly had too much to drink. Normal. I like nights because nobody looks at the janitor. I push my cart, empty bins, mop floors, wipe down railings. That night, I noticed two changes. Security had moved a metal detector closer to the emergency room entrance, and there were 3 police cars parked in the drop-off lane with their engines idling. The officers were inside, standing near the triage desk instead of outside in their usual spot. I slowed near the triage doors and pretended to adjust a wet floor sign so I could look in. All the bay curtains were drawn. That never happens. Nurses and doctors move in and out all night, and they hate closed curtains. But now, every bed in sight was closed off, clips tight, plastic rustling when someone brushed past. At the triage desk, a nurse I knew, Dana, was speaking quietly to a police officer. She kept one hand on her pager like she expected it to go off at any second. I heard only pieces as people walked by and monitors beeped. They started. After midnight yesterday, more agitation. Restraints are not holding. The police officer nodded once, like he already knew the story. I went back to my cart. If you keep moving, nobody tells you to leave. Our hospital sits in the middle of downtown, wedged between office towers and an old bus depot. 12 floors, 2 basement levels. One basement is for maintenance and storage. The other is utilities, laundry, and access to the service tunnels that tie into the city's steam and power grid. I know those levels better than my own apartment. Around midnight, the first loud noise hit. It was not a crash. It was a collective shout. You learn the sounds over the years. Families crying is one sound. Staff yelling orders is another. This was different. This was the sound people make when the script in their head stops working. I left my cart near the staff elevator and took the back hallway toward the emergency room. There is a narrow window cut into the fire door there. I pressed my shoulder against the wall and looked through the glass. One of the curtains had been ripped down. I could see a man lying on a bed, restrained at the wrists and ankles with soft cuffs. His eyes were open and moving in short, jerky motions, not tracking anything, just snapping from one point to another. A nurse leaned over him to check the intravenous line in his arm. He sat up with one movement, like a hinge snapping shut. No slow push, no roll to the side, just flat to upright. The strap across his chest pulled tight and creaked. The nurse froze. For a second, I thought she had done it, that she had pulled him up on purpose. Then I saw her hand, fingers spread, hovering over the intravenous line, not touching anything. "Sir, you need to lie back," she said. His head turned toward her in a way that made my neck hurt. Too fast, not coordinated with his shoulders. His mouth opened and closed, not like he was trying to speak, more like he was trying to remember how to move his jaw. Another nurse moved in with the sedative. The doctor called out, 2 milligrams intramuscular now, in a calm voice that did not match his eyes. The man on the bed made a sound like air forced through a blocked pipe. The electrocardiogram monitor beside him showed a flat line. I do not know much medicine, but I know a flat line means a person is not alive. The machine was still flat while he sat there moving. My hand tightened on the mop handle until my knuckles hurt. The sedative nurse jabbed the needle into his upper arm. He did not flinch. His eyes moved again, not to the needle, not to the doctor, but down the row of beds, as if he were counting them. Then he lunged sideways. The strap across his chest tore. The sound was sharp and short, fabric ripping past its limit. Both nurses went down under his weight, and the room exploded into motion. Alarms, shouting, crash cart wheels bouncing over door thresholds. I backed away from the window. They teach us in orientation that if something goes wrong, we step aside and let clinical staff work. That night, nobody needed to tell me that twice. I retreated to the staff elevator, pressed the call button, and held my cleaning cart in front of me like a shield. The elevator doors opened on an empty car. I almost got in. I even stepped over the threshold. Then I thought about what I'd just seen. I stepped back out and let the doors close. I did not want to be trapped in a metal box if whatever that was spread. I took the stairs down instead. In the maintenance break room on the basement level, the television was on. Someone had put the news on mute and forgotten to turn it off. The caption at the bottom of the screen talked about a respiratory outbreak in several states. There was aerial footage of military trucks outside a different hospital in another city. I sat down for the first time that night and felt the mop handle still in my hand. I had carried it all the way downstairs without noticing. It is just aluminum and plastic, but right then it felt like something I did not want to put down. I stayed there for 10 minutes, listening to the muffled thumps of the washers and the hum of the ventilation, trying to decide if I had imagined what I had seen. Then the emergency generator tested. It happens once a week. The lights flicker as the system switches to backup power for a few seconds. It is scheduled. We always get an email about it. This time, there had been no email, and the flicker lasted longer. The overhead lights dimmed to half for almost 20 seconds. When full power came back, the television had frozen on a still image of a reporter standing in front of a hospital that looked a lot like ours. I walked to the phone on the wall and picked it up. The line was dead. That was when I knew this was not just a busy night. I keep a small locker in the maintenance room with my own things. A flashlight, a multi-tool, a cheap battery-powered radio, some snacks. It is not official emergency gear, just what I have picked up over the years. I opened the locker and took everything out. When you spend your nights in empty hallways, you learn to keep a bag ready. On the way out of the break room, I tapped the power panel with the back of my hand. The metal was warm. The main generator was working hard. I took the service stairwell up to the first floor and eased the door open a crack. The noise hit first. Alarms from monitors, overlapping announcements from the intercom system, voices yelling instructions. But there were gaps. The calm, measured overhead announcements had been replaced by short, panicked calls. Security to emergency room. All available staff to Trauma 1. Code. The rest was lost in static. I went back into the stairwell and pulled the door closed. The stairwell is concrete and steel. Sound travels strangely in it. I could hear the building breathing through the ventilation ducts and the distant wail of outside sirens. I decided to move sideways, not up. The hospital has a ring of service hallways running behind the public areas on each floor. They connect linen rooms, storage closets, the kitchen, and the maintenance rooms. If you know them well, you can cross the entire building without passing a single waiting room. I started along the basement hallway, passing the laundry area and the mechanical rooms. The ventilation fans masked most of the noise from above, but every now and then there was a thud that made the ceiling dust drift down. At the far end of the hallway is a locked door that leads to the morgue. I have a master key on my belt for cleaning. I usually avoid that area at night. There's no reason for me to be there once the afternoon shift has done their work. Tonight, the door was already open a few inches. I did not push it wider. I just stood there and listened. No movement, no voices, only the steady hum of the refrigeration units behind the wall. I backed away and made a mental note of the door's position. If something had opened it from the inside, I wanted to know if it changed. Back near the elevator, I almost ran into someone. "Whoa, sorry." It was Miguel, one of the security guards. He was breathing fast and his radio was turned all the way up. I could hear chaotic chatter through the static. He had one hand on his belt where his baton and pepper spray hung. "What is going on?" I asked. He exhaled and shook his head. "They told us it was a flu. Then they said it was some kind of reaction to medication. Now they are saying restraints are failing. We are trying to move people upstairs, but some of them—" He stopped, searching for the word. "Some of them are not responding like they should." "Like that guy in the emergency room?" I asked. He looked at me hard. "You should not have seen that." "I clean the floors," I said. "I see everything." He almost smiled. Then his radio crackled. As someone shouted, "We need assistance in intensive care, room 4. Patient is out of bed. Repeat, patient is out of bed." The voice was too loud, too close to the microphone. Miguel glanced at the stairwell door. "I have to go. Listen, if things get worse, you stay down here. Use the service corridors. Do not take the main elevators. If the lights go out, those shafts become traps." Then he did something I had never seen him do. He unclipped his flashlight and pressed it into my hand. His own light was larger than mine, metal instead of plastic, heavy enough to be used as a weapon. "I have another one," he said before I could protest. "And you know this place better than anyone. Do not be a hero, okay?" I nodded. He ran up the stairs, the door banging shut behind him. I slid his flashlight into my belt and headed for the supply room. There's a central supply area on the first basement level where they keep everything that does not have a place upstairs. Cardboard boxes of disposable gowns, cleaning chemicals, spare light bulbs, rolls of plastic sheeting. There's a small office beside it where the supply clerk does inventory. The room has one entrance and no windows. In an emergency, it is not a bad place to sit and think. I unlocked it, stepped inside, and locked it again from the inside. From the office computer, I tried to open the hospital intranet page where they post alerts. The screen loaded half of the home page before freezing. A red banner at the top said, "Internal incident in progress. Please stand by for instructions." There were no instructions. There was a landline phone on the desk. I lifted the handset. Dead. I tried the radio next. I turned it to the frequency where the maintenance crew talks about broken sinks and flickering lights. The channel was silent. I switched to the local news station. A calm voice was reading headlines about the outbreak moving east. The timestamp said it was earlier that evening. The more I listened, the more I realized the radio was not live. It was a recorded loop. Whatever was happening outside was not getting through. Time moved strangely after that. I checked my watch and 1 hour had passed. I checked again later, and only 10 minutes had passed, even though it felt like more. I went out into the supply area twice for bottled water and snack packs. The hallway lights hummed and flickered but stayed on. There were distant sounds. Rolling beds, running feet. A scream cut off halfway, the dull clatter of something metal on tile. On my third trip out, I almost stepped on the blood. It was smeared across the floor in a wide arc, as if something heavy had been dragged. I stopped on the clean tile and looked up. There were 3 streaks leading away from the supply door, toward the freight elevator. In the middle of the smeared path lay a single hospital shoe cover, the disposable kind nurses wear in operating rooms. It was flattened and damp. I followed the path to the elevator. The metal doors were open, but the car was not there. The shaft was a dark, square hole, The streaks went right to the edge and stopped. I stood there, listening for the sound of the elevator moving somewhere above or below. Nothing. I did not look down. Instead, I pulled the out-of-order sign from my cart and taped it across the elevator doors, as if a sheet of laminated paper would make any difference. When I turned around, someone was standing at the end of the hallway. She wore blue surgical scrubs and had her hair in a tight bun. No badge. Every person on staff wears an identification badge clipped to their chest or on a retractable reel at their waist. Hers was missing. "You are maintenance?" she asked. "Janitorial," I said. "We need you upstairs. They want all non-essential staff to help with moving patients." Her voice was flat, like she was reciting from a script. Her eyes were too wide, and she did not blink enough. "We were told to stay in the basement," I said. "By who?" "Security." She took a step closer. Her shoes were dry, no marks on the tile. "Security is overwhelmed," she said. "You have to help. We need beds cleared. We need bodies moved." She said bodies, like she was talking about laundry. "Which unit?" I asked. She hesitated. Just for a second, but long enough for me to notice. "Intensive care," she said. "What floor?" She looked at the elevator shaft behind me, then back at me. Her eyes flicked to my belt, where Miguel's flashlight hung beside my keys. She did not look at my cart or at the mess on the floor. "Fifth," she said. "Intensive care in our hospital is on the 4th floor." I did not correct her. Instead, I nodded slowly and reached for the cart handle with my left hand. My right hand closed around the flashlight, wrapping over the ridged metal. "I will get my supervisor," I said. "Wait here. It is easy to get lost down here if you do not know the halls." Something in her expression tightened. Her jaw moved, but her eyes stayed fixed on me. She took another step forward. "You can come now," she said. "We do not have time for—" I pushed the cart toward her as hard as I could. It rolled faster than I expected, loaded with cleaning chemicals and bags of trash. The front bumper caught her in the hip. She staggered and grabbed the cart handle. The plastic bags swung, knocking bottles against each other. For a split second, I saw her hands clearly. The fingertips were torn, the nails broken back to the quick. Dried, dark stains were stuck in the creases of her skin. She'd been trying to claw through something hard. She hissed, not a word, not a shout. A short, sharp exhale between clenched teeth. I turned and ran. Not toward the stairs, not toward the main elevator. I sprinted for the double doors at the end of the hallway, where the sign read, "Maintenance Only." I heard the wheels of the cart skidding behind me, then the slam of it hitting the wall. Footsteps followed, too fast and uneven, soles slapping the tile. I swiped my keycard, pushed the door open and let it swing shut behind me. The maintenance corridor beyond is narrow and cluttered with pipes. I ducked around a stack of air filters and grabbed a metal bar we keep nearby for moving heavy equipment. I wedged it through the door handle brackets, bracing the door. A second later, the door shook as something hit it from the other side. The metal bar flexed but held. Fingers scraped at the gap under the door. I saw those torn nails again, dragging across the tile. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it was shaking the walls. Eventually, the scraping stopped. The hallway went quiet. I stayed there, leaning against the cool concrete, listening. No radio, no phone, no instructions. Just my own breathing and the muffled chaos above. That was the moment I understood I was not just cleaning up after an emergency. I was inside it, and nobody was coming down to tell me what to do. I needed a plan. In the maintenance corridor, we keep more than mops and light bulbs. There are tools, ladders, spare parts, and a small locked cage with items security does not want left lying around. Extra handcuffs, an old riot shield from a training exercise, and a few pieces of equipment they used years ago when the hospital tested active threat drills. I used my master key to open the cage. Inside, hanging from a hook, was a clear plastic riot shield with a grip on the back. Next to it, a box of nitrile gloves and a stack of disposable coveralls. I put on gloves and pulled a coverall over my clothes, more to feel like I was doing something than out of any real belief it would protect me. I took the shield and an old flashlight with a metal body. Together with my own light and the mop handle, it made a strange collection, but it was better than nothing. Now I had to decide, stay in the basement and hope this burned out, or move. Staying meant trusting the building to keep me safe. I know every fire door, every emergency exit, every weak lock that will not hold if someone leans on it too hard. The thought of sitting in one room while doors were tested one by one did not appeal to me. Moving meant stepping into a building where some people were walking around after their hearts had stopped. I chose a third option. I would move, but only through spaces I controlled. Service corridors, stairwells, storage rooms. My world shrank to back halls and staff-only signs. I started with the second basement, where the boilers and electrical panels are. If the power failed completely, the whole building would turn into a dark maze. I needed to know how close we were to that. In the boiler room, the heat hit me like a wall. The main units were running at full output. Red indicator lights glowed along the panels. No faults. The big diesel generator in the next room shook the floor with its steady rhythm. Fuel gauges showed more than half a tank. At full load, that would last several hours. Maybe more if some parts of the hospital had already shut down. On the far wall, a small screen showed building power status. A diagram displayed each floor in green or yellow. Green for normal power, yellow for backup. The emergency room level was already yellow. The longer I watched, the more yellow blocks appeared. 4th floor, then 3rd, then the main lobby. Something was taking the hospital apart piece by piece. I could have stayed there in the hum of machines, but curiosity pulled me back upward. Not curiosity for its own sake. Knowing the building is how I stay calm. If I do not know what is happening, my mind invents things worse than reality. So I compromised with my fear. I would look, but I would look on my terms. On the 2nd floor, I took the service hallway behind radiology. Through a narrow window in the door, I could see the main corridor. A bed was tipped on its side halfway down, blocking most of the width. Papers were scattered like snowdrifts. A monitor lay on the floor. Screen cracked. A man in a hospital gown stood with his back to me. His gown hung crooked on his shoulders, open down the spine. His skin was pale, with a grayish tint, like he had been sitting still for too long. An intravenous line trailed from his arm, the bag dragging on the floor behind him. He was not walking. He was just standing there, head tilted as if listening to something I could not hear. After a full minute, he jerked one step forward, heel slamming the tile, then paused again. I do not know how long I watched him, enough to realize that if I opened the door, he would not call for help or ask me where to go. He would just turn toward the movement. I moved on. In the pharmacy storage area, the door was ajar. Shelves were half empty. Someone had taken supplies in a hurry. Boxes of gloves, masks, and bandages were gone. A tray of syringes lay overturned on the counter, needles bent. There was movement in the back of the room. "Hello?" I said softly. A face popped up over the counter. It was Dr. Singh from Internal Medicine. His usually neat hair was askew, and his glasses were smudged. He wore his white coat over green scrubs. "Thank goodness," he said, straightening. "I thought everyone from maintenance had cleared out." "Some of us are still here," I said. What is happening upstairs?" He sighed and rubbed his forehead. "We do not fully understand it yet. Patients who were declared deceased are showing signs of motor activity. They are not responding to pain or sedatives. They are not following commands. They are aggressive toward staff. Whatever this is, it is not any condition I have learned." He spoke like he was dictating notes, but his hands shook. "Is anyone in charge?" I asked. "Administration is trying to coordinate with the city, but communications are unstable. Elevator control has been compromised. We are moving patients by the stairs when we can. Some staff have left the building without authorization." "Left?" I repeated. "Run," he corrected quietly. "They ran." He gathered a few more boxes into a cart. "I'm going back to the 4th floor. There are still people there who cannot be moved. We're going to try to secure that unit and wait for outside help." I thought of the yellow blocks on the power diagram. "Backup power is already on in some areas," I said. "The generator will not last forever." "Then we have even less time than I hoped," he said. He looked at me in a way no one has looked at me before in this building, like I was not just the person who emptied his trash can. "You know this place better than anyone," he said. "We need safe paths between critical units, hallways without exposure to main corridors, storage rooms we can use as temporary holding areas. Can you mark some routes?" I nodded before my fear could answer for me. He handed me a roll of bright orange tape from the counter. "Mark the doors that are safe to use with a strip of this. Cross out the ones that are not. We will tell staff to follow your markings." So that is how I became something I never expected. The person quietly deciding which doors meant a chance at safety and which meant something else. For the next several hours, I moved through the back halls with my tape, my shield, and my borrowed flashlight. I peeked through every small window before opening a door. If I saw movement that did not look right, I taped a large X across the handle. If a hallway was clear and had 2 exits, I hung a short strip above it. In one storage room, I found 3 nurses and an orderly sitting on the floor with a patient in a wheelchair. They had pushed cabinets against the door and were sharing a single flashlight. "Are you here to move us?" one nurse asked. "Not yet," I said, "but I can give you a better door." There was a secondary exit they had forgotten, hidden behind a rolling rack of linen. I cleared it, checked the hall, and marked it with tape. Their relief hit me like a wave when I told them it was safe for now. In another hallway, I found a man in blue scrubs slumped in a corner, his head resting against the wall. His arms were bandaged. The bandages were soaked through. His badge was missing. I did not wait to see if he would move. I just closed the fire door and put a thick X of tape across it. Not everyone I met was honest. Twice more, people in scrubs or coats appeared without badges, telling me they were assigned to units that did not exist or using the wrong terms for simple equipment. They asked too many questions about where the exits were and how to reach the loading dock. They did not ask about patients, they asked about ways out. They were not the same as the shambling figures in the gown. They moved like healthy people, but their eyes were wrong, and they watched the tape marks with too much interest. I gave them vague directions and marked those hallways with X's as soon as they were out of sight. By the time the sun rose outside and gray light filtered through the high windows of the stairwells, the hospital was a different place. The main lobby was inaccessible from the back halls. The cafeteria doors were blocked. Only a few pathways remained open between intensive care, the operating rooms, and a cluster of rooms on the 3rd floor where mobile patients had been gathered. Those 48 hours are a blur of small details in my memory. A ventilator battery alarm beeping in the dark until someone found a portable generator to plug it into. A child sitting on a gurney in a supply room, hugging a stuffed animal and staring at the wall, while his mother, still in a nurse's uniform, helped Dr. Singh start an intravenous line for someone else. Miguel, limping into the maintenance corridor with a tear in his uniform pants and a bandage on his leg, grinning weakly when he saw me still there. "I told you not to be a hero," he said. "Looks like I became one instead." He had helped move someone out of a room after they stopped breathing. They had gotten up again before he left. We formed a small group in the back corridors. Me, Miguel, 2 nurses, and a respiratory therapist named Carla. We took turns watching the stairwells and checking the tape paths. We shared information in short, calm sentences. How many patients were stable? Which doors had started to rattle with repeated impacts? Where we had seen people who were walking, but not quite right. We also noticed a pattern. Some of the not quite right staff in scrubs seemed to avoid bright light. They lingered in stairwells and corners where emergency lights were dim. They watched us more than they watched the patients. They flinched when someone mentioned the police outside, or when a radio crackled with distant sirens. One of the nurses, a tall man named Evan, pulled me aside. "I think some of them are not sick," he said quietly. "I think they are using this to get into places they should not be. Pharmacy, safe rooms, storage with controlled medications. I saw a man in scrubs break into a locked cabinet with a tool. He walked away with a bag full of vials and never even looked at the patient in the room." "Criminals?" I asked. "Opportunists," he said, "or worse. People who were already here for the wrong reasons. This situation just gave them cover." That was the other half of the phrase that had been haunting me since this started. Not all of them are who they claim to be. Some were patients who did not stay dead. Some were people who had waited years for a chance to move unseen through a building full of medicine and frightened people. We could not fight both at once. So we did what we could. We quietly shifted tape markers when we realized a path had become known to the wrong eyes. We closed off side corridors and created new routes through storage rooms. We recorded the changes on a clipboard in the maintenance office, building our own map, separate from the official floor plans. On the second day, around noon, the outside world finally reached in. It started as a low vibration under my feet, different from the generator. A deeper, slower rhythm. Then the muffled sound of a loudspeaker outside, too low to make out words, followed by the chop of helicopter blades somewhere above the roof. Shortly after, the overhead speakers crackled. A voice, strained but controlled, came on. "This is hospital administration," it said. "We are coordinating with city emergency services. All staff and patients in secure units remain where you are. Do not attempt to use the main elevators. A controlled evacuation will begin shortly. Follow instructions from designated staff when they arrive." In the maintenance office, the power diagram showed more yellow than green, but the generator was still running. I sat down in my usual chair, the one by the locker with my name taped on it, and looked at my reflection in the dark computer screen. Coveralls smeared with dirt and who knows what else. Gloves torn in places. A riot shield leaning against the wall by my knee like it had always been there. The door opened. It was Dr. Singh, tired but standing. Behind him, 2 paramedics in full protective gear waited with stretchers. "We found your tape routes," he said. "They kept people alive. The city wants to send teams in through the paths you marked to bring patients out. They will be looking for you to guide them." I looked at the map on the clipboard. Lines of orange and crosses of tape, my quiet decisions turned into a plan. "I am just the janitor," I said out of habit. "Tonight, you were more than that," he replied. "You know this building better than anyone. They will follow your lead." Outside, I could hear engines idling and the murmur of many voices. The world was still in trouble. People were still getting back up when they should not. The city hospital was only one place in a long list of places dealing with the same thing. But inside these walls, for the first time in 2 days, there was a path that led somewhere other than deeper into chaos. I stood up, picked up the shield and the flashlight, and checked that the tape roll was still clipped to my belt. "Then let us go," I said. "I will show them the way." Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.